and Wednesday on NPR. 50 years and 4 days ago was the first celebration of Earth Day, an annual event celebrated around the world on April 22nd, intended to demonstrate support for environmental protection. Last Sunday and Wednesday, I heard interesting comments from two young climate activists, both 17-year-old high school students. One I'm sure you've heard of, Greta Thunberg, and another maybe not, but who you will, I'm sure. And that's Naina Argawal-Harden. Thunberg, commenting on Earth Day and COVID-19, said that Earth Day reminds us that the climate and environmental emergency is ongoing while we are faced with the corona pandemic at the same time. She felt we needed to be able to tackle two crises at once. Argawal-Harden indicated that climate change activists had hoped to mark the occasion this year with demonstrations and conferences, but that those were all canceled because of the pandemic. This past Wednesday, she had been hoping for the biggest climate strike yet. She noted that their plans had to pivot. They could not have millions of people in the streets. Instead, as you may know, there were 3 days of online activism, wrapping up Friday, focused on encouraging young people to vote. Further, Argawal-Harden had originally envisioned Earth Day as a really critical turning point for the climate movement. Without the protests, it doesn't look like that happened. But she felt that it doesn't mean that a turning point is not coming. She sees potential for a turn in the country's coronavirus response. While the Green New Deal she supports has been criticized for costing too much, she's encouraged by the $2 trillion relief package that passed Congress last month. When and if the climate crisis is viewed with the same urgency as this COVID-19 crisis, trillions of dollars can be procured for relief and solutions. My cynical self said, when and if indeed. All right, so let us begin today with a pop quiz. Ready? What do you see that's different about the climate this year compared to a decade ago? Well, one answer is, on average, spring comes 26 days, nearly a month earlier than it did just a decade ago. With all the chronic noise currently coming out of our nation's capital, I think this truly crucial, critical issue is not getting the attention it deserves right now. As we know, humanity has come to exert biological and geological agency over Earth's environment in profound ways never previously experienced. Indeed, never before in human history has the whole of the biosphere been an object of moral concern. We cannot escape the gravity of our situation. Increasing global land and ocean temperatures, sea level rise threatening half the global population who live in coastal areas, and freakish severe weather events beyond anyone's memory. We're facing a brewing catastrophe. But when I look at the powers that be, particularly in the US, again, that ugly cynic in me says, it seems like, and forgive the analogy, in the game of life and death we're playing, nature bats last. Further, we as a nation float in a sea of partial truths about climate change With that in mind, what chance do we have of moving towards success or even peace of mind if it remains so? We need to not only see and hear the truth, we need to tell the truth. Telling the truth about climate change means admitting there will be increased suffering ahead. Well, the growing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events and disasters, with the growing intensity, comes increased flood and water insecurities, desperate migrations, and for humans, terrorism, warfare, and genocide. Climate refugees are for real and are now among us and coming to us. What about their movements and needed resettlements? Telling the truth about climate change means admitting it's about way more than our light bulbs, cars, and dinner plates. It means facing the truth about the contributing role of capitalism and neoliberalism and the foolhardy notion of a sustainable path of unlimited growth and expansion. It means waking up to our political and historical reality and seeing that we live in a culture that goes back to at least as far as 1776, when America proclaimed the self-evident truth that all people are created equal, and then proceeded to disenfranchise women, commit genocide against Native Americans, and build an economy on the back of enslaved human beings. Telling the truth about climate change means acknowledging that its disproportionate impact is not just far away islands, but also the most vulnerable and marginalized in our own cities and states. Telling the truth about climate change means acknowledging and accepting that our emissions, reduction targets, and other measures we use to prevent runaway climate change are falling further and further behind the evolving reality. Telling the truth about climate change means admitting that we need to do much better than the Paris Agreement and more quickly to protect our coastal cities and the indigenous peoples everywhere. It means getting on board with the urgency of making a rapid and just transition to sustainable communities where energy is clean, safe, sustainable, accessible, and affordable for all. Telling our truths about climate change frees us to move forward with larger imagination. As we plan and take actions, we must continually ask ourselves and each other, whose voice or presence is missing? What piece are we leaving out? We need to begin engaging one another in collective hope, imagining possibilities and artfully crafting a new future story. As writer and environmentalist Bill McKibben tells us, the most important thing any person can do is not to stand alone, but to join with others in the climate movement. This movement transcends individualism. Individual actions do contribute both the climate change problems and its solutions, but they will never be a substitute for participating in the larger climate movement. If Unitarian Universalism is to be relevant to this rapidly evolving world, our congregations need to be engaged in the work of building sustainable and resilient communities grounded in a planetary ethic. as Unitarian Universalists and as seventh principle beings, we must remain faithful to our principles and the interdependent web as we help build more grounded communities. We can speak powerful truths as we think globally and act locally. We, the gentle, angry people, with or without our yellow school bus colored standing on the side of love t-shirts. We can speak the language of power by responding compassionately and forming alliances within our communities, by working on state and local mitigation and adaptation planning and politics, and by ensuring local and state disaster preparedness plans keep the inherent worth and dignity of all people in the forefront, guarding the rights of the most vulnerable. Remember, we are those people who can help make the world a better place. If we tell and will live our truths. May it be so. Amen.
I have a song to share with you. This is Stand by Amy Carol Webb. Some of you may have heard this song before, and please sing along as you catch on to it. Yep, hold on one sec. Let me get the words up here. Here we are. I will stand with you. Will you stand with me? We will be the change that we hope to see. In the name of love, in the name of peace, will you stand with me? When injustice raises up its fist, fights to stop us in our tracks, we will rise, and as one resist, no fear, no sorrow can turn us back. Oh, I will stand with you. Will you stand with me? We will be the change that we hope to see. In the name of love, in the name of peace, will you stand with me? If you feel moved to dance right now, you go right ahead and do that. When pain and hatred turn up angry noise, try to drown out our freedom song, we will rise in one joyful voice, loud and clear and ever strong. Oh, I will stand with you. Will you stand with me? We will be the change that we hope to see. In the name of love, in the name of peace, will you stand with me? When broken hearts come knocking at our door, lost and hungry, and so alone, we will reach as we have reached before. There is no stranger in this our home. Oh, I will stand with you. Will you stand with me? We will be the change that we hope to see. In the name of love, in the name of peace, will you stand with me? In the name of love, in the name of peace, will you stand with me? Thank you so much.